Welcome to another edition of Northern Heat. My name is Bob Lennon, President of ThermalWood Canada and host for the show. And today we have an old friend of mine and a very special guest today, Paolo Fongemie. Paolo, how are you today?
Good, Bob.
Well, Paulo, if I can say it, over the last 5.5 months, your life journey has been a bit challenging, and there's been a few curves spun at you.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Be a good way to put it, right?
yeah, good way to put it. Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
A tumor that popped out in my back that I didn't know that was there, and was a cancer tumor, a very form of bone marrow cancer, and you got your ups and downs. You get operated. There's a chance you're not going to make it out alive without the operation. Then the week after, they do tests on your legs, and you can't feel your legs, so you're paralyzed. Then they give you a prognostic of a cancer that was partial, that you might have 1 to 5 years to live. And my wife was focusing on the 5 years. I was focusing on the 1 year. I was going out on my terms, so I was preparing my funerals. Then they give another news that was not, my chances of survival were greater. But they say you might spend a good part of your life in a wheelchair. So that's where I said, no, I'm not getting out of the hospital sitting down. I'm getting out, standing up.
So it's been quite a roller coaster ride going through that emotionally and everything else as you go through. In a short period of time.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, I happened to be at a conference in Prince Edward Island, and they had a guest speaker come in, Heather Moyse. And Heather was a two-time gold medal champion at the Winter Olympics. She comes from PEI. I still remember it. She comes from PEI, and she won gold medals in bobsledding. Okay, so first of all, that's a little bit out of the ordinary. But she's written a book, and she wrote a book, and that, when some of the points of her book that she had, that's what made me think of you and to contact you to talk about it. So she has 3 points or main taglines in her book, and it's shift of perspective, seize the potential, and own your story. And so if I ask you a question, the first question through that is that about, shifting your perspective. Has this shifted your perspective? Because I knew you before, and I knew how stubborn you could be. And when you had a goal in mind, you're just going to go for that goal and make sure it happens. But what has shifted in your world today?
It's I'm still trying to figure things out. It did change my life. I don't have. It did, it did change a lot of my life. The shift, I guess, I see things differently. I don't stress on things anymore. But I'm trying to find the purpose. When I went through that roller coaster, not once did I focus on why. Why is this happening to me? Why me? For me, it was not useful.
But many other people would.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But for me, it's shit happens. So you just deal with it. So I was focused on the how. And I guess it became more important now to focus on the how. How do I get up? How do I get out? How do I walk? How do I not be a burden to my wife? How can I live at my home? How can I play with my grandkids? How can I go swim in the bay?
Yeah.
This was my new mission on the how. So I became focused. At the same time, by controlling my narrative on social media, and people kind of embark on the how, people following me. And I'm still trying to figure out how can I make some good out of it. Not for me. Obviously, it does help me, but especially how do I make some good to other people?
Too many people look at it as at the why, like you said, and then you dwell on that stuff. But what you've been able to do is look at it as the how, and be able to walk through these things, and look at everything as a challenge.
Yeah.
And you're taking them on as challenges.
And people would focus on how bad lucky I am. When I was in the hospital and I had two other roommates, I was feeling lucky because I was able to go home. They were not. I was able to be better, to get better. They had a hard time of getting better. So it became how I felt I was lucky. I felt I was privileged. Even though I had all that hardship, it was a motivation for me. But for them, when I left, they told me I was their motivation because they saw me working on my bed in my corner with the rubber bands and the weights between training at night on the weekend, and they were motivated to try to do more because they saw me doing more. So we had this relationship that we didn't know that we're helping each other. So it's things like that you take it in and you reflect and say, okay, I didn't see that perspective. So how can I? It's there's a lot of emotions that went through, the journey, and I'm still early in my journey.
Yeah.
And it's how you digest and how you digest the pain also, right? Physical pain, I was the only one to live it. But the emotional pain and the psychological pain, my wife went through it. My kids, my best friends went through it. So that pain was kind of shared. So, and it was so intense. So how it's still, after 5 months and a half, and, you're thinking you're dead, you're thinking you're paralyzed, you're thinking that, you got a year, and then you're thinking you're never going to walk again. Then you got all that pain. It's not 5 years. It's 5 months, right? So it's so intense. So I still try to compute it and see how can what's my new purpose in life.
So that really steps into the second point that she brings in about seizing the possibilities and the potential of what you can do with what you've gone through in your story.
Yeah, I made an analogy with Rocky, not because I'm a fan of the movie. I do like the whole Rockies series. Maybe less Rocky 5 there, but the whole series is. But I always use Rocky as an analogy in my work, especially attached to mental health. When Rocky, he would be beat up at the end of the fight. He would win his fight, but he would be beat up. And each round, he would have his knee on the mat. And I said, it's okay to have your knee on the mat because you just finished a hard round, and you got to take a breather, and you got to take a pause, and it's okay in life to take a breather and to take a pause. So I was associated with that with the mental health. Now I associated, to my journey with resilience. Rocky was resilient. And it's funny, Thursday, the mayor of Philadelphia proclaimed June 19 as Rocky Day in Philadelphia. And Sylvester Stallone went those 72 steps. And there was thousands of people. And in his speech, he talked about resiliency. And so that's why the Rocky have the Rocky attitude. So I have a lot of people communicating with me, people that I don't know, talking about their hardships. They're going through a cancer, or they're going to a heart operation, or their grandkids have a tumor in the brain, and tumor in the spine. And my story inspired them that something good might happen. So these are things that are not easy to read. And you don't want to give false hope. And one thing in my journey, I was able, to roll myself in the wheelchair and go to the chapel every night. It was my only time I would get out of my room, and to reflect on, give the courage fight, but get the courage to accept what you can't change. And I know I'll never be 100% back. That's clear in my mind, and I accepted that. I know that I'm never gonna be able to go in the river in waders and fly fish. With my legs, waders, river current, it was a recipe for disaster. So I've accepted that.
But you'll figure out another way on how to go fly fishing without all those other parts.
Probably. But I accepted that there are things that I won't ever be able to do. And you gotta make your in French ton deuil. See? So and that's what I tell people, yes, that you gotta have the strength to accept things that you might not have any control. So it's there's too much emotional things that happening, and it's trying to compute, and people see resiliency, they see the success, right? And they see, I did my 5K, success, right? But your friends and family, my wife, they see the pain, they see the tears, they see the bad days, right? And they're sometimes more bad days than good days. Like today's a good day. I don't have a lot of pain. I have my mobility. The last 2 days were awful, really awful. I was very discouraged. So, and that's part of, you want to manage the hope. Say, yes, there's hope, resiliency, but there are going to be bad days, and you got to accept that. This is part of the process. The bad day is part of the process to get the better days.
Well, all that stuff, you're owning your story, like Heather says, you're putting everything together, you're working your way through it. Every day changes, and you've understood that it's part of the process. So if you were to leave a message to our audience and stuff, what would it be? And this isn't an easy question, but where do you see that message being?
I guess in life, either with your health, if you're a student in your studies, if you're at work, your family, the importance of being resilient. Life is not easy. Wake up in the morning. For some, it's a grind, right? But you need to have that rocky attitude, right? You need to do something that's better than the day before. Something that you were able, one more, right? When I first started walking, I did 5 steps. It took me half an hour with 2 people hanging on my shorts and did 5 steps. Yeah. The next day I did 25. The day after I did 50. Yeah. When I did the parallel bars, I did 4 laps. The next day I did 5. The day after I did 6, 7. That's how you have that rocky attitude. So if you're a student during your apprenticeship blocks, you try to learn a new thing than the day before. If you're a student at university, you try to learn a new concept, or you're practicing a technique, you're trying to do it maybe a second faster, or you're trying to do it an extra step, right? If you play sports, the same thing. Try to do one thing. It's the resiliency. You need to be resilient. And it's not only when you're having through hard times, if you're resilient. It's every day in your normal life. Because when you get the hardship, when you get your life challenge, you'll have the tool, the mental tool to go through it.
And thank you very much for sharing that with me. And as a little token of our appreciation here, is that the meaning behind the Northern Heat is exactly what you're doing. It's turning up the heat and believing in the possibilities that are there and cranking up that heat behind it. So, Paolo, on behalf of us at ThermalWood and and the Northern Heat report and what you're doing for the community and what you're doing for everybody. And on top of that, you haven't stopped working either. So she's still the general manager of La Belle Bee. Yeah. And that's totally impressive. And congratulations. And thank you very much for being here with us today. And thank you very much for being here, period, with us today and being able to talk with it. And I know you're going to help people as you go through.
I hope so. Well, thanks, Bob.
And there we have it. Another edition of Northern Heat for this week, the place you come to listen to the stories that haven't been discovered yet.